reason, probably because you've experienced some frustration, some resistance around weight loss. I think we all have at some period of time. And so the invariable question becomes, what is the secret, right? What is the elusive nature of weight loss and fat loss that we hear so much about in mainstream media, right? What is it that we should be doing? What should we be eating? What should we be abstaining from? How should we be exercising? What's the secret to be able to do this? And the truth is that there are no secrets, but I'm going to share 3 fundamental principles that are going to shed light on why there are no secrets and why everything that we're being exposed to is lending itself to creating more confusion than clarity. And so what I want you to know is that you're not alone. Now, do me a favor and go ahead and comment in the chat box. How many of you have tried a number of diets over the course of your life? Just give me a yes in the chat box if you've tried a number of diets over the course of your life, of course. And how many of you are still not where you want to be? You can say, yes, me. Absolutely. And have you considered that jumping into another diet isn't the best approach? Lots of yeses there. And so based on all of that, would it be helpful if you knew why all of these diets fail, but more importantly, what to do about it to create the results that you desire? And so, like I said, let's talk about the real reasons why dieting has failed you. And there's 3 proverbial secrets here, which, as I said, are not really secrets, but in fact, physiological principles, fundamental principles that are interfering with our body's ability to lose weight by virtue of the number of things that we try over the course of our life. Now, secret number 1 that we probably don't know about is that the more that you diet, the more resistance you're going to experience. And so we're led to believe that weight loss should be easy, but clearly it's not. And no one wants to acknowledge that it's going to take more than a 30-day cleanse or a juice fast or 75-day challenge or medically supervised bars or shakes to move the needle. Now, can those things work? Absolutely. But you and I both know that it's few and far between. And so secret number 1 that we're going to cover is the more that you diet, the more resistance you're going to experience. Now, secret number 2 is your thoughts around food will determine your success. Your thoughts around food is the main thing holding you back. And this is what we call dichotomous thinking. This is the all or nothing, the black or white, the good versus the bad thinking. And you may not realize it, but this level of thinking is strongly correlated to weight gain. And so I'll share more about the science and the psychology of that very soon here. And secret number 3 is that failure is actually necessary for success, and how we can leverage and embrace failure in order to help us move the needle in the most realistic and effective way possible. And we do this by understanding what health and weight loss is and what it is not. And what we know about health and weight loss is that it is not about having perfectionist tendencies. It is not about having an all or nothing mindset. It is not about instant gratification, and it's not about fear of failure. What it is about is this level of self-sabotage, about overeating, about snacking, about dining out, about drinking alcohol, and understanding that having unrealistic mindset around all of these things in and of itself is the self-sabotage. And so we'll dive into that, but let's talk about a fundamental truth, right? Nutrition and fitness should complement your life. not add stress to it. So let me ask you, for those of you on the call, how many of you are doing this for yourself? How many of you want to lose weight, want to get healthier, want to improve your lifestyle, want to look better, want to feel better? How many of you are doing it for yourself as well as for other people in your life, for your family, for your children, perhaps, for your friends, right? So that you can be more productive in other areas of life. Do me a favor and just comment in the chat box. All of us. I think all of us are. And by understanding some basic principles, you can spend less time worrying about what to eat and more time doing what you love. And in my opinion, that is what's absolutely necessary in order to implement a nutrition and an exercise program that helps you move the needle in a way that's going to create a better environment for you and your family. And so let's remember throughout this, and I applaud you, Tony, for you and your grandkids, absolutely, because it's not just about following a plan, which is what we're really going to dig into in this conversation. It's not just about following a plan. It's about understanding your own individual needs and creating a lifestyle approach. And I know that sounds cliche, but truthfully, if we're not instilling these fundamental principles, if we're not able to lose the weight and keep it off and do it in a way that's going to fit within the lifestyle that we want to live, what are we actually doing? And are we potentially doing more harm than good? Because if you can't see yourself eating in a certain way in 6 weeks or 6 months or even 6 years, then again, what is it that we're actually doing here? And so before I dive into that, let me introduce myself because I realize there's a number of new faces here. So I'm Ben. I'm Ben Brown. I am the owner and co-owner and CEO with my beautiful wife, Christina, who's on the call here, of our company, BSL Nutrition. And we help highly driven men and women build a better body and create the energy to show up for their family without adding more to their already overflowing plates. And I am known in some capacity as the quote unquote doctor's nutritionist for the number of doctors, just like Dr. Chambers' clinic here, which again, we're so appreciative of, known as the doctor's nutritionist for the number of doctors that both refer us and actually work with us as clients as well, which we're very, very honored to be able to do. I have a dual master's degree in exercise and wellness, as well as a master's degree in clinical nutrition, and quickly approaching 20 years of experience in the field of coaching individuals just like you. And I've helped hundreds of people, mothers and fathers and C-suite executives and professional athletes and sports teams to create the health freedom that they desire and change their mindset around what it means to live a healthy lifestyle, because so much of what we're talking about, so much of the dieting resistance that we experience begins up here, begins in the mind. And most importantly, I'm a husband, a father to 3 amazing children, and a fine tequila aficionado to boot. And so before we get started here, a few things that I'm going to challenge you with, my friends. I'm going to challenge your commonly held beliefs around fat loss. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to be very, very transparent about things as they stand, both from years and years of anecdotal evidence as well as scientific research. I'm going to show you how to give yourself the freedom and the body you desire. And I'm not going to reveal any big quote unquote secret or magical fix. Like I said, there are no secrets when it comes to weight loss, but there is a scientific and systematic process that we follow to be able to leverage the types of results, which I'll show you that we do. And I will walk you through our pure science and proven results process. Plus, I'll offer you an invitation to join us if you stay until the end of this presentation. And so let me share a little bit about me and what puts me and has put me in this position to be able to offer this insight and knowledge and wisdom for you for what it's worth. I was an athlete growing up, and I'll use the term athlete somewhat loosely, but I suffered from a number of gastrointestinal issues from the time I was about 14 or 15 years old, all the way through college and graduate school. And none of the doctors that I visited over the multitude of doctors that I visited over the years could figure out what was going on with me. I would have extreme acid reflux. I would have gastrointestinal issues. Like I said, I would throw up all the time. I had to be very, very picky about the types of foods I could consume. I was on all of the antacid medications, the Nexium and the Prilosec and the Zantac, that probably some of you might be familiar with. I had an endoscopy where they put the tube, the video camera down your throat to see what's going on with the stomach lining. And outside of having some quote unquote inflammation, the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. And this essentially propelled me in my own journey to figure out for myself. And the process that I leveraged to be able to figure this out, which took a long time that I wouldn't wish upon anyone, was exactly what has put me in the position to do what I do today. And through that process, I've learned many difficult and costly lessons, which ultimately, like I said, has shaped my philosophy, our philosophy on nutrition and fitness, and ultimately put us in a position where we were tired of the misinformation out there in the world around nutrition and dieting and weight loss. And we set out to find a different way. And through my experience of working with clients over the course of the year, I made it my mission to not only study and educate myself to the best of my ability on how to not only help myself, but help others do the same, but ultimately to change the state of the dieting industry as it stands. And through my process, through going through graduate school, through studying from practitioners all over the world around fitness, around nutrition, around clinical nutrition, around functional medicine, around supplementation, we've been able to develop quite a unique approach, a whole body approach, if you will, which is why our company is called Body Systems. BSL stands for Body Systems Labs. And it's a body systems approach to understand that it's not just about calories in, calories out. It's not just about exercise. It's also about hormonal balance. And that's so much of what we're going to talk about. And so through this process, I noticed that there were a number of fundamental flaws with conventional dieting, and I witnessed people failing left and right. Clients were going on overly restrictive, calorie restrictive plans, on aggressive exercise plans, and they were losing the weight for a short period of time, but then they were gaining it back. The inconsistencies were rife across the board. And I was also noticing other practitioners, health practitioners, doctors, nutritionists in the same boat of prescribing these quote unquote cookie cutter plans with no regard to individualization, right? No regard to the fact that clients were having short-term success only to gain the weight back. And frankly, that they were being blamed for lack of compliance, that they were the ones who were the failure, not the practitioner. And this was really hard for me in the initial years of my coaching practice, of not understanding the biochemistry of how the human body works, not understanding why the nature of the dieting industry is the way that it is, and not having a clear-cut plan of attack for how we were going to help clients in the most effective way to help them to create the type of long-term, realistic and sustainable results that they want to create for themselves. And ultimately, I got to a breaking point with my journey of having figured out the tools to heal myself by this point. This was around 2015, and I had gone back to graduate school in 2010 for my second master's degree, which, by the way, when you have a 6-month-old infant, this was our first child, Zoe, when you have a 6-month-old infant, a working wife, and you decide to go back to graduate school, things can feel very, very challenging, as I'm sure some of you might understand. And one of the things that I was realizing, despite the fact that I had overcome some of my own health issues, I had also perpetuated a lot of disordered eating behaviors along the way. A lot of myopic focus, like I said, this dichotomous approach, this black or white, this all or nothing approach to nutrition that I was frustrated around because it wasn't working for my clients. Invariably, it wasn't working for me, despite the fact that I was no longer suffering in the way that I was. Psychologically, I was still suffering with many of the same things around my nutrition. And I was frustrated and I didn't know what to do. And I found myself one night in the middle of the night, and I do recall it was 2015, and I was sitting at my computer, and I was very seriously contemplating exiting the industry completely. And I was on the computer, and I was on one of those job search platforms, and I was actually searching for a new job. And I was putting in my credentials and looking through, medical device sales, and something that I was perhaps in some capacity qualified to do. And I received, I checked my email, and I had received an email from my, at that time, my daughter was 6 or 7, and she was in kindergarten. She must have been 6. And I received an email from her teacher asking us as parents to write our child a letter for when they graduate from high school. And so again, she's 6 years old, she's in kindergarten, and now I'm projecting out 12 years, and I'm thinking about the situation that I'm literally sitting in at this very moment, the countless hours and the dollars that I have spent over my career at that point, investing in myself, investing in my clients, wanting to be the best health coach, nutritionist possible, and thinking about what it would mean for me to write a letter to my daughter for 12 years down the road, having to acknowledge and go back 12 years from today to acknowledge what I had given up by quitting on my vision, by quitting on my mission, by quitting on the commitment that I made to myself and my family to change the state of the industry. And in that moment, I recommitted to the responsibility that I felt like I had, and still feel like I very strongly have, and committed to changing the belief system around what it means to be healthy. And that's really what our mission has become with BSL Nutrition. It's to change the belief system around what it means to be healthy by building a community of strong-minded, capable, able-bodied individuals just like you and me, to be able to make our own nutrition decisions. And we've been very, very blessed in the number of individuals that we've been able to impact over the course of now the past 15 to 20 years. Lots of amazing testimonials, many of which I'll share with you here in a moment. But let's get into the meat of this here and talk about the real reasons why dieting has failed you. Now, secret number one is the more that you diet, the more resistance you are going to experience here. Now we're led to believe again that weight loss should be easy, but clearly it's not. And again, no one wants to acknowledge that it's going to take more than a 30-day cleanse or a juice fast or a 75-day challenge or medically supervised bars and shakes to truly move the needle. I apologize. There's naturally our lawn guys are here, so bear with me for a moment. Secret number 2 is, as I said, your thoughts around food will determine your success. And so much of this has to do with this all or nothing, this good or bad thinking, this dichotomous thinking. And secret number 3 is that failure is necessary for success. And so let's jump into secret number 1, diet resistance. The more you diet, the more resistance you'll experience. And so I'd like to share a little bit about our client, Michelle. Now, Michelle is a mother of 2, and she's a self-proclaimed lifelong dieter. And from the time that Michelle was 10 years old, so this is, she's now 40 or 41, but from the time that Michelle was 10 years old, she was dieting. She was enrolled, as she said, fat camp from at 10 years old. She has been through every single diet under the sun, Nutrisystem, Weight Watchers, multiple times, Jenny Craig, HCG twice, Optavia, the bars and waffles, and I don't know what all's entailed with that, but not eating a lot of food, Scottsdale weight loss, phentermine, diet pills, right? All of those types of things. Like I said, she's been dieting on and off more than 20 different fad diets over the years, creating quite the perpetual roller coaster. And what Michelle experienced was that every time that she would lose weight, she would lose it for a very, very short period of time. In fact, she'd almost white knuckle the approach, right? With the end in mind, knowing, okay, it's going to be 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. And when it's done, I'll have freedom again, and I'll be able to go back to my old way of eating. And invariably what she experienced was then perpetual weight gain thereafter, right? And what she was experiencing over the course of her life was this level of dieting resistance. And so I have a question for you, and that is, has anyone ever told you that the more that you diet, the further you move away from homeostasis and the more metabolic resistance that you create? And do me a favor and comment in the chat box. Has anyone ever told you that the more times that you diet, the more resistance you create for yourself? No. And has anyone ever told you that each diet makes it subsequently more difficult to lose weight with dieting? Did you know that? Or is that starting to process in your mind now based on the number of times that you've dieted? Is it perhaps might have felt much easier the first time than the 10th time? Does that resonate with anyone? Exactly. And so allow me to apologize on behalf of the entire weight loss industry. And so what we know is that every time that we diet, we create a certain level of metabolic resistance, especially when we aggressively restrict calories and or aggressively expend calories. And when done for too long of a period of time, we create a metabolic red flag. And the reason for this is because the body is so adept at staying in homeostasis, staying in balance. And you've probably heard that term before. And all that means is that the body wants to stay balanced. It wants to have stable blood sugar. It wants to have stable energy levels. It wants to be able to fuel the muscles and the cells to be able to function the way that it's going to function. It wants to be able to maintain stable blood pressure levels, right? All of these functional and foundational kind of chemistry signals, biochemistry signals that the body's so good at doing. Now, every time we apply a stressor in the nature of dieting and or exercise, it's potentially going to disrupt this homeostatic balance. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing and a beautiful thing around how our metabolism responds, is to be able to maintain homeostasis by elevating blood sugar, by reducing blood sugar, by secreting insulin, by stabilizing blood pressure levels, and so on and so forth. And the good news with this is that it's not your fault. The fact that you've dieted any number of times, the fact that you've lost weight, the fact that you've gained it back, the fact that you've felt like it was necessary to follow these overly restrictive meal plans with the horizon and the end in sight, almost like you're experiencing this tug of war. And as you're getting towards the end of the diet, you simply just want to let go of the rope because you're literally at your wit's end, both physiologically as well as psychologically, so that you can go back to quote unquote normal. It's not your fault that you've experienced this, because this is everything that's perpetuated in our dieting culture of feeling like we need to create that level of restriction in order to move the needle. And the problem with this, my friends, is that every time we create that level of restriction, we also create resistance. We create internal, intrinsic, and psychological resistance around your metabolism pushing back. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what that means and how that's represented. And so invariably, we've learned the hard way when we've done these overly restrictive meal plans. Because oftentimes what happens, and you're welcome to comment in the chat box if this is something that resonates with you, but especially when we undereat, especially when we aggressively overexercise, especially when we do any combination of those things, oftentimes what happens is we do in fact lose weight. And I'm not arguing that. We do lose weight. But sometimes, and oftentimes, especially when we do it aggressively, we don't look better, right? We're exercising to offset the calorie intake. We're losing weight, but oftentimes we're also losing muscle mass in the process. So despite the fact that we lose weight, our body shape can often stay the same. This is sometimes referred to as skinny fat, where we feel like despite the fact that we are a lighter person, we're still holding on to just as much body fat as we were before. And what's important to understand is when we create this level of resistance and restriction, a lot of the weight that we lose through this process comes from lean muscle tissue. It comes from our muscle mass. And so oftentimes this is represented where you're looking in the mirror or you're standing on the scale and you know you're doing the quote unquote work, but you don't feel like you're seeing the results. And of course, you're sacrificing your quality of life in the process. Does that resonate with anyone? And so this is where our metabolism comes in, is what we call the rebound effect, right? This is where the eat less and move more approach only works for a very short period of time. And it ultimately sets us up for long-term failure, right? Because let's just take a step back from all this information that I'm sharing for a moment here. And I just want you to think about what the logical way to lose weight is, right? If someone was to tell you, you have to lose 10 pounds in the next month, what would you logically do? Invariably, you would think that the next step is to eat less and to move more. And that's not necessarily wrong. However, the aggressive way in which we're approaching this with our dieting industry is setting us up for disaster, as many of us have experienced over the course of our lives. And so each time that we do this, each time that we create this level of restriction, our metabolism is going to respond, not dissimilar to a pendulum. here, when we push it one way, when we aggressively restrict or over exercise, invariably it's going to push back in the other direction. Now, what does that look like? Well, what happens when we fall off our diet? Oftentimes we're afflicted by hunger, lack of energy, cravings, changes in our mood, changes in our libido, decreased or diminished digestive function, impaired cognitive function, right? This is our body reacting. This is our body reacting to the metabolic pushback of a reduced calorie intake. And this is the very reason why such a large percentage of dieters gain the weight back, is because of this pendulum effect, because each attempt at losing weight moves us further and further away from this homeostasis, this natural balance, this metabolic set point that we have, and create some level of metabolic adaptation. And you can see this acronym here, SHMEC, SHMEC. What that means is an acronym for sleep, hunger, mood, energy, cravings, right? We often ask our clients, is your SHMEC in check? Is your metabolism pushing back to try and create this level of balance? If you're overly restricting, this is the body's way to say, hey, ding dong, go eat some more food and stop exercising so much, because we are literally scared for our life at this point. I hope that's making sense for you. And because the harder that we push, the more aggressively the body wants to push back. Now, one of the most important components that I touched on that I really want you guys to understand who are on this call here is that when we're aggressively dieting, a significant portion of that weight that we're losing is coming from lean muscle tissue. And lean muscle tissue is one of the most powerful, metabolically supportive, and hormonally influencing tissues that we have in our body, to the degree that the more muscle mass we lose, and by the way, if you're not already physically active, and if you're not physically active throughout the course of your life, especially as you're getting older, you're losing muscle mass every single year. And the less muscle mass we have and the more body fat we have, the more metabolically damaging and hormonally influencing, and not in a good way, it's going to be on us and our ability to be healthy, lose weight, feel good, and all of the reasons why you said you're here, not just for you, but for your family. And so the solution here is what we call metabolic restoration. Has anyone heard of metabolic restoration before? Do me a favor and comment in the chat. A couple of people have heard of metabolic restoration. That's awesome. A couple of people haven't. Well, let's talk about what it is. Now, as I said, the more you restrict and the more extreme the calorie deficit, the slower your metabolism is going to be because of the muscle that you lose. Now, I want to be very, very clear and matter of fact and transparent with every one of you. There's nothing wrong with your metabolism, right? We hear these buzzwords around metabolic damage and metabolic compensation and metabolic adaptation. And my metabolism, quote unquote, my metabolism is broken. No, your metabolism is not broken. In fact, your body's very, very smart. Your metabolism is doing exactly what it's meant to do to keep you alive, based on what you've done to yourself over the course of your lifestyle by virtue of overeating, undereating, overexercising, underexercising, and living the type of lifestyle that we live today. That's just the reality of it. And so our goal here is to build the most robust metabolic machinery possible to be able to support the weight loss process. That's why this idea of metabolic restoration is imperative, because we need to be able to fuel our metabolism adequately so the body doesn't naturally adapt. And clearly the way to fuel the metabolism isn't to overly restrict and overly exercise, at least for not a long period of time. Is that making sense for people? And the main driver of this, so that we can kind of bring things together, the main driver of this is understanding that we have to do everything in our power to support lean muscle tissue through this process as well. So when we aggressively lose, we also lose lean muscle mass. The more lean muscle mass you lose, and the more times we yo-yo diet, right? What happens when we lose weight, right? We lose maybe 20 pounds doing an aggressive diet over the course of, I don't know, maybe 3 months or something like that, or maybe even less. Well, bear in mind that a good percentage of that, maybe 50% of that, is coming from lean muscle tissue. And what happens when we go back to our normal eating patterns? We gain that weight back. But you know what you don't gain back? You don't gain back the lean muscle tissue. All of a sudden, that creates a metabolic discrepancy, so that we do, in fact, have a slower metabolism now, because we don't have as much lean muscle tissue. And remember, I talked about how lean muscle tissue is a major metabolic driver. It's a major metabolic driver of not only fat loss, but health, of energy production, of blood sugar regulation, and of homeostatic balance. So if you guys take nothing else from this presentation, please understand the value of supporting lean muscle tissue, especially as we age. So let's get back to Michelle here. Remember, lifelong dieter. So what was going on with Michelle? She was experiencing this level of dieting resistance. Every single diet she would go on, she would lose weight for a very short period of time, then gain the weight back. We had to flip the script with Michelle. When it comes to metabolic restoration, we had to actually support what her body wanted for her to survive, frankly. We had to help feed her more nutrient-dense food. We had to help her increase her protein intake. We had to get her to stop doing all of the overly aggressive and intense cardio exercise, like the boot camps and the spin cycles and the very, very aggressive exercise, and get her into some basic, progressive, and structured strength training. Just adding in some daily walking, and frankly, a lot of daily walking for her, because it was something that she really, really enjoyed. And most importantly here is we empowered her to do what works for her. There was no food lists or restrictions. There was no food rules. There was no judgment, guilt, or shame about any bit of this process, which you'll understand why this is so significant. But again, if we were to simply implement another diet, would that really be serving her? No. So instead, by taking it from an approach of, we're going to completely eliminate the idea of food rules and restrictions, so that there's no judgment, guilt, or shame about this process, so that you have autonomy as an adult to be able to make the decisions that are right for you, then that's what's going to be something that you can stick with long term, so that you can be a better mother, so that you can set a better example for your kids, and so that you can provide and serve your community in a bigger, better way in perpetuity. That's what the goal was. And for her, and I'm going to kind of cruise through, because I really want to respect your guys' time here, but for Michelle, it absolutely changed her lifestyle. And this is not to toot our own horn. This is to really acknowledge her and applaud her and her efforts of really changing, again, her belief system around what it means to be healthy. So she said, since I'm 10 years old, I've had my mom come meet me at the pool steps to greet me with a towel to wrap around my body so no one saw me. Now, 30 years later, I don't feel the need for that. I can go hiking with my family. I can be in the pictures without feeling like I need to use my children to cover me up. That's what we want for our clients, and that's certainly what we want for you. So metabolic restoration is, and I'll talk about more about this when I explain our pure science proven results process, but essentially it's being able to restore metabolic function. It's being able to build the foundation so that we can move the needle in the most realistic way for you individually, without needing to handcuff you and make you white knuckle the process. So that you can feel noticeably better and build foundation for long-term weight loss. And so that's dieting resistance. Let's jump into stinking thinking here, and how our thoughts around food will determine our success. And again, I'm going to speed up my talking a little bit, because I want to make sure we have time to get through everything. But the main thing that holding us back is not what we should be eating and what we shouldn't be eating. And the problem, the the fundamental problem in our industry today, and I grabbed this is a post that I saw on social media the other day, right? A very well-respected, by the way, physician. I think he's a pharmacist, but very well respected in the health and fitness industry, says the golden rules are no sugar, no cereal, no bagels, no muffins, no fast food, no seed oils, no margarine. How does it make you feel when someone tells you you can't have any of that if you want to, quote unquote, be healthy? These are the golden rules of nutrition. Do me a favor, share in the chat box. How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel encouraged? Does that make you feel rebellious? I don't know about you, but a part of me just wants to say, screw you. I'll eat whatever the hell I want. Excuse my language, right? How does this type of language and these types of examples perpetuate the unhealthy relationship that we have with food? Because our thoughts are, your metabolism begins up here. It begins in our mind around our thoughts, around food. For all of you doctors, right? I believe that there's a number of you doctors from Dr. Chambers' clinic listening, and you remember studying in medical school how digestion begins up here. What happens when we see food? We start salivating, right? Digestion begins up here. That signals the body to start to produce the digestive enzymes and mechanisms that we need to start breaking down food. We can't argue that food starts, that digestion begins up here, that our metabolism begins up here. And so it would be irresponsible for us to not acknowledge that weight loss is not just about calories in, calories out. Weight loss is about our relationship with food, our relationship with our body, our balance of hormones, and the ways in which we, of course, think about food. And we know this very clearly from the research that shows that this dichotomous thinking, this good versus bad thinking, is strongly correlated to weight gain, to the degree that for the vast majority, and this is what we see with the statistics of like 95+% of people gain their weight back, especially when they lose it in a short period of time. But it lends itself to this restrict binge cycle of excessive deprivation, of use of willpower, which, by the way, is a very finite resource. And so what we need to be very, very cognizant of is when we're thinking about foods as good or bad, when we're being told by well-respected health physicians that you can't have sugar, you can't have cereal, you can't have bagels, as if bagels are at the root cause of all of our health issues. Like, that's perpetuating this horrible relationship that we have with in the industry, and the perception that we have to be all or nothing, which frankly is not the way that our psychology works, as I'm trying to elaborate to you. And so much of this lends itself to food anxiety, right? Where we're worried about what to eat when we're at a restaurant, when we're at a party, when we're at a social event, when we're on vacation, because of all the good and the bad foods. Oh, I was bad, right? Invariably classifying ourselves as a bad person because you ate, quote unquote, bad foods, right? What happens if I eat gluten or dairy or bagels or whatever he said in those? If I eat seed oils, God forbid, does that make me inherently a bad person? And what sort of guilt and shame and regret do I start to feel by virtue of having health experts tell me that I can't have certain foods and that certain foods are off limits, right? Has anyone experienced this, of feeling guilty for eating certain foods, feeling like certain foods are off limits, feeling like you have lack of control, or binge episodes because of this, right? Trying to white knuckle it. I won't have it. Screw it. I had a bite. Well, I already had a bite. I might as well have the whole thing. And we know this from the research of how, as I just explained with our digestive processes, right? And when we just start thinking about food, especially food that we enjoy, like I'm thinking about, lunch coming up, and all of a sudden I can feel my body, my salivary glands starting to produce saliva. Well, we also know from the research that the way, what we're told about certain foods impacts our body's hormonal responses, to the degree that they ran a research study here on two groups of people. So they did a blinded research study, and they gave each group of people a shake. And in one, and by the way, the shake was equivalent calories. So let's just say the shake was 300 calories for each of the shakes. However, in one of the groups, they labeled the cup as indulgence, the indulgence shake, decadence, you deserve 620 calories. And in the other group, they labeled it Sensi shake, guilt-free, fat-free, 104 calories. So you can imagine if you're sitting in a room, someone hands you a shake and it says indulgence shake, 620 calories. How would you feel in that situation? Right? How would you feel around drinking a shake like that? I imagine you'd feel very full, very satiated, kind of almost maybe guilty about drinking something that calorically dense versus the Sensi shake, quote unquote, guilt-free, fat-free. Interesting. I would expect to feel perhaps like it didn't affect me at all. I'd feel like, this probably isn't going to be very satiating. I would wonder when my next meal is going to come from. And so what they did in this milkshake study is they monitored a couple hormones, namely ghrelin and leptin, which are two hormones that are secreted from the brain into the body when our body signals fullness or hunger. And what they observed was that those that drank the indulgent shake responded as if they had consumed 3 times the calories than what they really did. Again, both shakes were the exact same number of calories, but the group that consumed the indulgent shake, by virtue of their thoughts around the shake and what they thought they were drinking, we could clearly see that the hormonal influx was 3 times that of the other group. Pretty significant, so much so that this is so much beyond calories in, calories out, of understanding our thoughts around food and how it impacts our hormonal signaling in our body and the way food reacts in our body and how we digest, absorb, and assimilate foods. It's very, very cool science. And so, like I said, with Michelle, no food lists or restrictions, no food rules, no judgment, guilt, or shame. Not dissimilar to my client, Greg here, who was able to drop about 50 pounds over the course of a year working together and had come into our program very much in a black or white, all or nothing thinking mindset. He'd been leveraging lots of running in the past. Obviously, coming into the program, he was pretty sedentary. But in the past, he had leveraged running as the main mechanism for losing the weight. And had very binary thinking around his food. And we helped him kind of create much more realistic balance to the degree that he really stopped leveraging running as a weight loss tool and really only utilized it because he enjoyed it. We helped him start to strength train more frequently and has been able to maintain that weight loss over the course of now 2 years within the program. And he said, never once has Ben told me what I can and can't eat, what I can't do. If I fall off track, it's okay because it's all part of the program. And one of the biggest things he's learned is about nutrition and about balance so that he can go out and live and enjoy his life. And that's really what it's all about. Another client, Ashley, very, very similar situation to Greg. And I'm going to jump forward here a little bit, guys, because I want to make sure, again, we get through everything. But Ashley was not in a dissimilar situation, and through helping change her beliefs around nutrition and exercise and stop taking so much of a black or white thinking of giving her permission to eat and drink what she wants, when she wants, and take responsibility and ownership over her behaviors, she's been able to lose, I believe, over 60 pounds now over the course of the past 18 months, keeping it off, and is really embracing the process, which is so inspirational. And so the solution here is unconditional permission, because if we don't address this, we won't be successful. Understand that when we give ourselves permission to eat whatever we want, we can actually take responsibility for the outcomes of eating those foods. How do those foods actually make us feel versus just eating these foods because it's off limits and you decided to say, screw it? Again, when someone tells you what you can't or shouldn't do, how does that make you feel? Psychologically, doesn't that make you feel like you want to only have that food? Right? So foods hold no moral value. We place meaning on certain foods, which means we can rewrite that narrative. And so we want to give ourselves unconditional permission to eat anything, anytime, and in any amount. And we want to remove the stranglehold and take back control, because when we have unconditional permission, and we see this time and time again, not only in the research, my friends, but also we see this time and again in our choices and in anecdotal experience with our clients around when we give you control and when you are allowed to make choices for yourself because you're a responsible adult, you have a much easier time losing weight and maintaining it. And so the solution is, like I said, unconditional permission. And this is a quote from Jonathan Baylor. He is a health expert who I interviewed on my podcast some years ago, and he wrote a book called Metabolic Set Point. And in this book, he said there's nothing you could eat that is as detrimental to your metabolism as feeling ashamed about eating it. Shame is more fattening. Stressing about that kind of stuff is literally more fattening than the sugar you consumed to trigger it. So if you eat something that's subjectively not high quality, does that make you low quality? It doesn't say anything about who you are as a person, because you made a choice and you can make a different choice in the future and move forward, but it says nothing about who you are, and it says nothing about your intrinsic worth as a person. I love that quote from him that he said on our podcast, because it really lends itself to the psychology of nutrition and dieting. And so let's jump into number 3, which is fat loss freedom. And so let's talk about self-sabotage, what it is and what it isn't, because it's time to put an end to food anxiety and binge eating episodes so that we can be more consistent and get better results. All right. So what self-sabotage is not? It's not binge eating. It's not snacking. It's not dining out. It's not drinking alcohol. Right? This is stuff that we all do. We're only human, and it's okay. But what's not okay, and what actually self-sabotage is having these perfectionist tendencies. It's having the all or nothing mindset. It's feeling like you need instant gratification. And it's not embracing fear of failure. It's having fear of failure because the reality is we're all going to fail, but it's our perspective of what that actually means and how we're learning from that experience. Because the truth is that success lives in the gray, right? Like I said, there's no such thing as perfection. You don't need to be all in or all out, and you can pursue your goals while still enjoying your life, eating the foods that you love, being social. Because once we remove the stranglehold of the black or white thinking, the all or nothing, the perfectionism, the eat this, not that, all of the sudden we're presented with a beautiful opportunity to have autonomy and to be able to make decisions that are in line with the goals that we said that we have for ourselves. Right? Because we're the executor and we need to be in control of those scenarios so that we can learn from our mistakes and just work to develop the skills to get better. That's what this journey should be all about. And so, as I said, the solution is to flip the script, accept failure as part of the process and the inevitable and valuable learning experience that comes from this, following an imperfect plan and understanding that we have flexibility and freedom through this process so that we can absolve ourselves from the perfectionist tendencies. Because when you take all of these things into consideration, my friends, all of the things that I'm talking about, the dieting resistance, and the self-sabotage and the fear of failure, when you take all of this into consideration, you'll likely start to understand that this is the only way to sustainable fat loss. Whether you've never dieted before or you've been dieting perpetually your entire life, it's not until you understand that this is the only way that you're going to be successful. And so the way that we do that is to discover your individualized needs, to understand as an individual, because we are all biochemically individual, to understand your own behavioral tendencies, your motivations, your own strengths and weaknesses, your personal triggers and responses. Right? We all have unique ways in which we respond to stimulus, to emotional stimulus, be it good or bad. All of the emotions that drive the food decisions that we make, the stressors that we experience, right? The frustrations, the fears, even the happiness of how we leverage food and perhaps alcohol to be able to change our brain state. We have to acknowledge those so that we can develop the behaviors to be able to realistically change them. And so we do this by embracing individualization. And Emily provides a really great example of how we did just that, of how she really embraced the mindset around the dieting process. Now, Emily lost over 100 pounds in our time over the course of just over a year. And I interviewed her on my podcast maybe 18 months ago or a couple of years ago. And at the point, she was down 70 pounds in the process. And what was so really, really fun about Emily is she's very, very smart, very successful lawyer here in Phoenix. And she entered our program from a position very much of, you cannot tell me what to do. I will continue. If this is the type of program that will not allow me to drink my beer, that will not allow me to eat my pizza, that will not allow me to eat chicken fingers, and that's going to make me eat vegetables, she straight up said, I will not be successful, which was awesome for me, because right off the bat, I knew, okay, well, clearly we're not going to approach this from a eat this, not that standpoint, which we wouldn't do anyways. But she really highlighted it to the degree that we simply just helped her add certain things into her diet, add in more protein, add in more movement, add in more fibrous foods so that she could naturally start to remove things as she saw fit so that we could move the needle. And so very, very individualized. Whereas someone like our friend Casey here, he's lost over 30 pounds through the process, but also put on a significant amount of lean muscle tissue and is now going on probably about 30 months of working together, very busy, father of 2 young girls. And for him, it really was being able to create the level of flexibility and freedom that he needs in his busy lifestyle to be able to continue to, because he's such a strong member of the community, is constantly involved in social events. So needs to be able to be out, to eat, to drink to some degree on the weekends. And so for him, it really was about helping him manage and navigate his nutrition and eating behaviors in a way that worked for him, so that he had that level of flexibility and freedom. And so it's very, very different for everyone, irrespective of understanding that it's more about the psychology of nutritional change than it is about the X's and O's. And so as we've discussed here, is the 3 secrets to sustainable weight loss are not in fact secrets, but they do revolve around supporting our metabolism in a realistic way, giving ourselves unconditional permission to make choices that are best for us under the circumstances, and to embrace failure and discover what type of person you really are so that you can learn how to continually make the best choices possible. And as I talked about my own issues growing up, my need to overcome my own health issues, my study of everything under the sun to be able to figure out how to heal my own issues, and invariably so that I could be able to provide better solutions in really an industry that I believe is not doing a great job helping people do just that, which is probably part of why you're on this call or watching this replay. All of the fundamental flaws that exist with our conventional dieting, and my life's mission to be able to provide the solutions in the best way that I know how at the current time. right? Those are always changing, and I'm ever learning and growing from every single one of the clients that I've been fortunate enough to work with and share with you today. So it's ever evolving, but I certainly, we certainly have learned a thing or two about the process. And so by virtue of going through this experience, by virtue of sitting in front of the computer that one late night, questioning the very reason why I wanted to do what I want to do and why I'm here talking in front of you, I committed to changing the game the best way that I know how. And throughout this process, throughout the years of doing everything that I can to do just that, it's very much been what we've created is called our pure science proven results process. And this is the combination here of all of my lessons over the year around the science of weight change, the psychology of behavior change, and frankly, the art of coaching, because clearly all of these matter, but in different ways for every single person. So that we could not only get great results, but we could make sure that these results last for a lifetime. And so I've shown you a number of responses from clients, a number of different testimonials. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to help you understand is it's been different for everyone, but the similarities revolve around the lack of restriction that exists, of teaching you how to become your own best nutrition detective, because we can't tell you what you can and can't do. Otherwise, it will not work. And there's 4 keys to success here that I'm going to cruise through. That's part of our pure science proven results process. And we'll wrap it up. Is the discovery phase, the metabolic restoration phase, which we've been talking about, fat loss acceleration, and lifestyle integration. And the discovery phase is where we observe your existing behaviors around calorie intake, around movement, around sleep and hydration. This is where we understand your individual goals, behaviors, existing routines and habits, and the way in which you need to make change. Once we have a good understanding of that and how that fits within your biofeedback, your hunger, your energy, your cravings, your mood, then we can drive metabolic restoration. Like I said, is fundamental. And every single one of the transformations that I've shown has first been able to leverage the individual biochemistry to be able to build the foundation for long-term change. Instead of pushing aggressive dieting right on you at the beginning, or overly aggressive exercise, we need to help you change your behaviors around nutrition and exercise, to create more calorie awareness, to build the fundamentals of strength training, and to learn how to reinforce daily consistency. Because without all of those, the fat loss becomes a moot point because it's going to be unsustainable. And so this brings us to fat loss acceleration, which is where we strategically drive a calorie deficit, because I'm not going to argue that in order to lose weight, we do need to create a calorie deficit, but we also need to create hormonal balance, which I've been alluding to around the support of the metabolism. And so there absolutely are times where we need to create some level of caloric restriction, but we also need to make sure that you have autonomy over the process. And by the way, so that when we are in a calorie deficit, we're supporting lean muscle tissue in the process. And that's why strength training is so important. And that's why metabolic restoration is so important. And then lastly is lifestyle integration, where we leverage our unique and individualized approach to ensure continual and realistic progress throughout the many road bumps that throw in our path. And this is where it's so important to have everything come together with lifestyle integration, is because you're going to hit snags in the road. You're going to experience quote unquote failure. You're going to have things come up that interfere with your ability to be consistent. And if you don't have the tools to be able to navigate those roadblocks, you're not going to be successful long-term. So that a successful program helps you build the tools and skills to be able to navigate those very things, so that when things feel hard and get hard and feel frustrating, you invariably have the skills to be able to navigate through those on autopilot. That's the sign of a successful dieter. And so what our journey typically looks like is our discovery phase is around 4 weeks. You can usually expect about 0.5 to 1 pound of fat loss per week, followed by our metabolic restoration phase. Now, this is very different for everyone. So I'm grossly generalizing here, but this is 3 to 6 months. of working to improve your energy, your mood, your sleep, improve your body composition through structured and progressive strength training, and help you build those skills to navigate the obstacles that we just talked about. Then we drive into our fat loss acceleration phase, which is driving our momentum, continuing to lose 0.5 pound to 1 pound a week, as you've seen from a lot of our testimonials, supporting energy through the process, and taking a more accelerated approach to the fat loss, because we will have the skills and the tools now. And then lastly, lifestyle integration, which was where we give you the autonomy, because you've become your own best nutrition detective, to continue to drive long-term results through this process. And so I've shown you a number of our different transformations. We've got a number, hundreds more transformations, but just a few of the clients that I think are worth mentioning here. Gabe here came to us diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Now we're probably a little over 2 years out. He's lost 40 to 50 pounds and no longer has elevated hemoglobin A1C levels. So technically he's no longer type 2 diabetic. Adam here is a busy physician. He's an anesthesiologist in Oklahoma, works a lot of night shifts. We've helped him massively change his eating and exercise and sleep behaviors so that he could clearly lose a lot of weight and improve his body composition. Bridget has been with us for over 2 years now, has dropped at least 50, I think, to 60 pounds. And she's eating more food than she's ever eaten before. In fact, she's eating probably upwards of 2,000 calories a day, which is pretty significant for a woman her size at about 165 pounds, which is pretty awesome. And so I could go on and on with all these transformations, but what I would love to know from you is how we can support you. And what I would love to do is have the opportunity to have a conversation with you, whether you're on this call live or you're watching the replay. I want to give you the opportunity to have a conversation with me so that we can talk more about where you are now, where you want to go, and what's getting in the way of you accomplishing the results that you desire, and help us determine whether we have the tools to help you bridge that gap. That's what this call is all about. It's not to sell you on our coaching program. It's first and foremost to make sure that we even have the skills and the tools. That we certainly have the skills, but have the tools to be able to help you, and whether you're frankly the right type of person for our program. And so mutually, it's an opportunity to get to know each other, to learn more about where you're coming from, what goals you have, and see how we can support you through the process. And assuming it feels like a good fit, then absolutely we'll invite you to join and give you a great opportunity to do so. And through the process, help you save time and money and peace of mind by never needing another diet program again, so that you can achieve your health and physical goals and maintain them, most importantly, and reduce stress by eliminating your anxiety and fear around food, which is what is absolutely necessary. And so what I would appreciate for anyone that is still watching and listening, one, I applaud you for taking action, for being the type of person to show up, invest your time in your health, to want to get better, to want to learn the tools and the skills to be successful long-term, not just for you, but also for your family, for your community. I appreciate you and acknowledge you for that. And so what I would love for you to do is just to send me a text message. Send me a text message, let me know your name, and just write interested in the text, and I'll get back to you. And again, we'll have the opportunity to chat. And if it feels like a great fit on both sides, then I'll give you the opportunity to join. And because you're a member and part of Dr. Chambers' community, and we're so appreciative and honored to be a referral source for Dr. Chambers' community, we're going to offer you 25% discount on any number of our coaching programs. And if you book within the next 24 hours, you don't have to book the call within the next 24 hours, but if you message me within the next 24 hours here, and we get a call on the calendar here for the end of the week, for this week or next, we will give you a free month of coaching as well. And so I'll hang out here for a couple minutes. I'll take questions. I'll give you the opportunity. I'd love to see you text message me and let me know that you are interested. I'm already seeing some messages coming in, so that is awesome. If you have not text messaged me, whether you're on the call or you're watching the replay, I guess my question would be, what are you waiting for? And if you don't give yourself the opportunity to have a conversation with us, what are you going to do instead? Is my question to you, because clearly it's not about the food. It's not about the good or the bad. It's not about avoiding. It's not about over-exercising, but it's about changing our relationship with food, our body, and the way in which our body responds to conventional dieting strategies. And it's about taking an individualized and behaviorally driven approach that leverages science, psychology, and the art of coaching in order to create a plan that's best for you. And that's what we want for you. And so the best thing that we can do is just have the opportunity to have a conversation to see if it's a good fit. If not, no harm, no foul. I'll absolutely do my best to refer you to someone who'd be better suited. And if it is fantastic, then you've given yourself the opportunity to make the change that you're looking for. And so let's go ahead and take questions. I'll hang out for a couple minutes. And again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time and joining me here. So thank you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Does anyone have questions?
I could ask you a question.
Please, Steve.
Thanks for the presentation. Very interesting. Resetting your metabolism. Are you following the scientific principles, or I guess the stuff I've read? Get better sleep, drink more water. That list of 12 things, and also how does intermittent fasting fit into your program?
It's a great question. Okay, so what I heard you ask was, with respect to resetting the metabolism, like what are the kind of fundamental principles of quote unquote resetting your metabolism, right? And then how does intermittent fasting play into kind of the whole thing? Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And so what matters with respect to resetting the metabolism is understanding the current state of your metabolic function. Now, clearly that has to do with your blood chemistry. It has to do with blood pressure. It has to do with thyroid function. And so invariably there's some physiological components to that. But when it comes to nutrition and exercise, the best things that you can do, as you said, is like, okay, drinking enough water. We need to make sure we're supporting the metabolism with enough movement. And so just moving enough on a daily basis, supporting the metabolism with our lean muscle tissue, as I alluded to over the conversation, is making sure that we're doing resistance training to be able to maintain, if not build, lean muscle tissue, because that's very, very correlative of improved metabolic function. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Steve? And so intermittent fasting. So those are like the big drivers. Okay. It's like, and these are, we fully understand these foundational principles around sleep, around movement, around strength training, around the quality of the food that we consume, right? Obviously the amount of food that we consume, because if we're eating in a calorie surplus, well, and then we're laying down body fat. Well, body fat is very, very metabolically damaging hormonal tissue, right? That's perpetuating these negative metabolic cycles. And so as it pertains to intermittent fasting is simply a tool in the toolbox to help us create caloric restriction. And this is clear in the science from what we understand as of now, is that there's no significant benefits of intermittent fasting beyond simply the fact that it helps you manage your calorie intake, right? So if you can eat 5 meals a day, you can eat 2 meals a day. The key to losing weight is to create a caloric deficit. Okay. And intermittent fasting is a great way to be able to do that for a lot of people that may find that they tend to overeat by virtue of eating from sunup until sundown. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
And so is it good or bad? I don't know. It really depends on the person. it really can be a very valuable tool, but we have to use it within the context of who are we speaking with, right? And once we understand, and this is what our discovery phase is for. Once we understand the individual, their readiness for change, their commitment levels, their pre-existing knowledge, then we determine if it's something that fits. It has to fit. It has to be the right tool for the right job is what's most important. But we have all of these, and this is what I've been really harping on, is we have all of these tools. We have keto. Okay, keto's not bad, right? Fasting's not bad. Vegan's not bad, right? Detoxes and cleanses. It doesn't make, these things aren't invariably bad, but when we try and take these myopic, aggressive, and overly restrictive approaches, and we try and apply it to everything and everyone as being the quote unquote solution, that is what's problematic. And that's the way we're looking at things through blinders around, oh, an ad just popped up. Well, this sounds compelling. I'll try this, right? And I think that these things are good to have experience with, because then when we take a step back and we look at, well, what worked for us? What didn't work for us? How did it work for me as an individual? And in what capacity did it work and not work? Then we can identify and really start to become our own best nutrition detective. That's what we're looking for. And so I appreciate when people come into our program having experience with these various dieting methodologies, because then we can reflect on those and say what went well and what didn't, and how can we leverage aspects of these to help you be successful long-term. Cool. Long-winded answer there. Debbie asks, do we have a gym? We don't have a gym. Everything that we do is online. Our entire coaching program is virtual, but we absolutely do recommend and prescribe, for lack of a better term, strength training through the apps and the computer programs that we have with all of our clients. Christina, you said, yeah, Christina answered in the chat. What other questions can I answer here?
I would like to state, though, sometimes, in the world that we're growing in, there's a lot of apps, a lot of automated process. We're a one-on-one coaching program. So you do meet with your coach weekly. Yes, it is virtual. It is via Zoom. So you can be anywhere throughout your life to be able to work with us. But you would not be just set up with an automated app that is coaching you through. It is actually a human that you're showing up to every single week that provides and does the art of coaching with you, which is what makes it so customized for your journey.
All right, my friends. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I really do appreciate you. And I do see that a number of people text, so I will respond back to you shortly, and we can have the opportunity to speak in person, which I'll look forward to. Don't hesitate to let me know. You do have my number. Don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. And we will talk soon. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.